Nick Wright from Sports Radio 610 in Houston, our buddy with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. All right, Nick, so last time we talked to you, the Texans were not very good. They have now won their last 5 of 6. What gives? How have they been able to do this?
The defense is the answer. It almost starts and ends there. DeAndre Hopkins has been great, but he was pretty darn good the first week of the year as well, the first few weeks of the year as well. It's because this defense that headed into the year we thought could be, along with, projecting Buffalo and Denver and the Jets, one of the 3 or 4 best defenses in football. The defense was horrific for a month or so, including, down 42-0 to the Falcons, down 41-0 at the half against the Dolphins. All of a sudden, the defense has been great. They haven't allowed a touchdown in 3 of their last 4 games. J.J. Watt has been tremendous. They benched Raheem Moore, their big free agent acquisition in the secondary, and their safety core has gotten better because of it. The real answer here is the defense has been great. That's why the Texans have looked like a different team.
Bills hosting the Texans this Sunday. Nick Wright of Sports Radio 610 in Houston joining us.
Nick, is the loss of Ryan Mallett addition by subtraction? Is there more continuity in the offense now that Brian Hoyer's not looking over his shoulder?
Yes. It's so a few interesting things happened kind of in quick succession. They finally moved on fully from Ryan Mallett, and they benched 2 guys that they'd spent decent amounts of money on. Raheem Moore, who I mentioned, the safety they signed in free agency, and Garrett Graham, the tight end, that was one of the first players this new Bill O'Brien regime gave a contract extension to. Those guys have been healthy scratches the last few weeks. That plus Ryan Mallett, this team always talked about accountability, but no one ever really seemed to be held accountable for anything. Those guys were, and I think you also got better players replacing them. So I think all those things helped.
Nick Wright of Sports Radio 610 Houston with Armen and Levack 104.5 The Team at Get Nick Wright on Twitter. We're looking at J.J. Watt going up against this weekend possibly 2 Bills offensive linemen, Shonchell Henderson and John Miller, both out of this game. How much are the Texans licking their chops on this one?
Well, I don't think if they are, it's not because of the Bills or the personnel, to be perfectly honest. I think it's because right now the defense is in a place where they believe it doesn't much matter who's on the opposing offensive line. I suppose, all the better for backup. But Clowney, now that he is getting healthy, he had microfracture surgery almost exactly a year ago. He looks to be getting back to the player we thought he could be. Whitney Merciless in year 5 it is for him. Year 5, I believe, maybe year 4. He has shown some flashes, and Watt's been so good. Just so great that I think they believe no matter who's on the opposing offensive line, they are going to be able to get to the quarterback.
See, here's something interesting. I love having you on the phone because you break things down and you have a good view of this stuff. What about the Buffalo Bills scares the Houston Texans?
Sammy Watkins, LaShawn McCoy, more than anything. That's what I think scares the fans. I'll tell you what scares me. I think you guys have a pretty damn good quarterback. I think Tyrod Taylor, 14 touchdowns, 4 picks for the year, but it's really more impressive if you take out a Patriots game. He's at 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's not turning the ball over. He's obviously a threat with his legs, but he's also proven to be a threat passing the ball. If they can't get to Taylor quickly, I think that could cause some issues.
I feel like you just gave some sassy fantasy advice, too, right there.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know how much McCoy. I think Clay would be a really good option, for sure.
Nick Wright of Sports Radio 610.
Oh, and let me interrupt you real quick. And speaking of fantasy, no matter what he costs, you should play DeAndre Hopkins. He has been. He is the only offensive weapon this team has. And last week, they started doubling Hopkins like every play, which led to a decreased production. But because of that, everyone else in the offense was open. I don't think the Bills are going to be able to double Hopkins the whole game. I think if you're, if the question were reversed, what should the Bills be worried about? It's DeAndre Hopkins.
Is he the best receiver in the game right now?
I don't think so, but it's amazing that he's in the discussion, right?
Okay. Yes.
Like,
yes.
Gun to my head, I take Odell Beckham over everybody. After him, I'd probably go with Julio Jones, but then I think it's Hopkins or Des Bryant. Like, when Hopkins was drafted in the first round, I thought he'd be a good player. After his first year, I was like, okay, he's definitely going to be a good player. After last year, I said, you know what, this guy might make a Pro Bowl one day. Now, it's a real argument. Let me put it like that. You can make the case that he's the best wide receiver in the NFL, and that's insane. And the best argument for him is who's been throwing him the football. He has had Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer, T.J. Yates, Tom Savage, Case Keenum throw him football. Like, Julio Jones, I don't think Matt Ryan's great, but he's demonstrably better than any of the guys I just mentioned. Eli Manning's not great, but he's demonstrably better than any of the guys I just mentioned. Those guys have always had great quarterbacks throwing them the football. Hopkins has never even had an above-average quarterback throwing the football.
Now, Nick, I think it's interesting that you say, whatever you're going to do play DeAndre Hopkins. Does he get pumped up knowing he's going against a secondary tandem of Gilmore and Darby, which has been, two of the better corners in the league this year?
Because I don't know DeAndre personally, it's tough for me to speak to his mental state. What I can tell you this is he wasn't intimidated by Darrelle Revis. In fact, he kind of beat Darrelle Revis up.
Yeah.
And after the game, when he was talking about Revis Island, he did the old air quotes move when he said Revis Island. Like, this guy, he's an interesting cat. If you watched Hard Knocks, he talked about how he wanted to get a fancy purse to carry around a little dog in. He's kind of a funny dude, but he is a very confident player, and he should be.
Nick Wright, Sports Radio 610, Houston. So what's your gut on how this game plays out?
It took me a long, after the Miami game, I thought the Texans were the worst team in the league. They looked like it. They were playing like it, even if the record didn't say it. I now believe that the Texans' defense is one of the, right now, 5 or 6 best units in the sport. So, the Steelers' offense, pick your favorite team, the Panthers' running game, the best units. The Texans' defense is so dominant right now that I'm not going to pick against them when they're playing what I consider a potentially potent but somewhat limited offense. I don't really care that what the records are in football. I care a lot more about what have you looked like the last month. The last month, the Bills have looked fine. The last month, the Texans, amazingly, have looked really, really good. So, I'd say 23-20 Texans would be my gut, but it wouldn't shock me if that score was reversed.
Got it. Nick Wright, Sports Radio 610 Houston. At Get Nick Wright is definitely worth the follow in the Twitterverse. Nick, enjoy the weekend, man. Enjoy the game, and I'm sure we'll bug you again soon, my friend.
No doubt. Anytime. Good talking to you guys.